What would happen if the sun stopped rotating? Not with an explosion, not with lights in the sky, just stop. In silence. You wouldn't notice it right away. The sky would remain blue, the heat the same, but something invisible would start to act, and you wouldn't even notice. Now imagine you are walking down the street. The cell phone loses signal. Satellites fall without explanation. Planes divert routes. And then your body starts to fail. You try to understand what is happening, but nothing seems wrong on the outside. It's like the world is running until it stops, as if reality itself was being dismantled from the inside out. Something much bigger has already begun, and nobody knows yet. Now tell me, if the sun stopped rotating right now, would you know how to identify the signs? Comment below. What do you think would happen to the Earth and to you if the sun locked down now? I want to know your theory. What if this wasn't just a hypothesis? Some scientists believe this phenomenon may already be happening, but no one is paying attention. Are we ignoring obvious signs? You will see surprising evidence in this video. Few people stop to think about it, but the sun rotates. Not like the Earth in solid and uniform rotation, but in a much more complex way. It is made of plasma, a matter in an energetic state that behaves like a super-hot liquid. This means that the solar equator rotates faster than the poles. While the equatorial region takes about 25 days to complete one revolution, polar regions can take more than 35. This difference in speed between the outer layers creates a type of movement known as differential rotation. It may seem like just an astronomical curiosity, but this dynamic is one of the pillars of the stability of the solar system as we know it. What makes this rotation so important is that it acts as an internal engine. It moves the sun's internal layers, drives magnetic fields, and directly influences the behavior of solar events, such as eruptions and storms. It's almost as if the sun had a beating heart, but instead of blood, magnetic energy circulates. Without this constant movement, internal processes would be at odds, and many of the effects we know could be completely altered. Imagine turning off the engine of a plant that powers an entire ecosystem. The structure can remain standing for a while, but the balance begins to be lost little by little, almost imperceptibly. In the case of the sun, this uneven and continuous rotation is directly linked to what keeps the space environment stable. Without it, the way the sun interacts with the space around it could be drastically different. And this raises a question that few consider. If it is the movement of the sun that keeps certain forces at work, what happens to everything that depends on these forces? There is a gigantic energetic structure that is born from this movement and that may be holding threats that most people cannot even imagine. What are we protecting without knowing it? The sun's rotation doesn't just generate movement. It is responsible for one of the most important forces for the existence of life as we know it, the solar magnetic field. Unlike what happens on planets like Earth, where the magnetic field is generated by the rotating metallic core, on the Sun, this force is born from the movement of superhot plasma in its internal layers. This process creates intense dynamic magnetic fields that extend for billions of kilometers around the star. This region is known as the heliosphere, a type of natural shield that surrounds the entire solar system. The heliosphere functions as a barrier that deflects high-energy particles coming from outside the solar system, such as cosmic rays and supernova radiation. It's as if we were inside an invisible bubble, constantly protected by a structure that we cannot see, but which directly influences the stability of our planet. Without this magnetic field, these particles would traverse space freely and hit Earth with full force. Now imagine this field collapsing, not due to an external failure, but due to the stoppage of the solar rotation. The entire structure of the heliosphere would begin to disintegrate layer by layer, allowing an avalanche of high-energy particles to traverse the solar system unhindered. Earth would no longer be a planet isolated from interstellar chaos and would become completely exposed. But what exactly do these particles carry, and where would be the first place we would feel the effects of this direct exposure? There are records and simulations that indicate something surprising about the impact of this collapse, a detail that many people still have unnoticed, and that could change the way we see our position in the universe. If this type of question makes you see the universe in a different way, it's worth clicking the like button. This way, you help the algorithm understand that topics like this deserve to be explored by more people who are also looking for answers beyond the obvious. Mainly because, without this shield, the direct impact of these particles goes far beyond the atmosphere. There is something that would start happening much closer to you, and perhaps within you, before any alarms would go off. With the sun's rotation interrupted, the magnetic field that supported the heliosphere begins to disintegrate. This invisible bubble, which for billions of years served as a barrier against cosmic threats, ceases to exist. The Earth, previously protected, is now directly exposed to deep space. Solar winds, high-speed energetic particles, and extreme-frequency cosmic radiation, which were previously deflected, now have a clear path. Earth's atmosphere, while robust, was not designed to handle this kind of constant bombardment from all directions. Without the heliosphere, the intensity of these interactions increases dramatically. The upper layers of the atmosphere begin to experience frequent electromagnetic disturbances. Earth's magnetic poles experience oscillations, opening temporary gaps in previously stable regions. This affects not only the Earth's geomagnetic field, but also the integrity of the ionosphere, responsible for protecting the surface against more aggressive radiation. Satellites begin to record unusual noises, and communication systems begin to experience inexplicable failures. It is as if something is interfering with the stability of the planet at levels that go beyond the technological. The space environment around Earth becomes hostile, not by an explosion, but by a gradual and profound change in the nature of the space that surrounds us. The signs are there, but human perception has not yet grasped the gravity of the transformation. The planet exposed is already reacting. But what does this new condition really mean for life on the surface? There is a part of this exposure that does not just affect satellites or atmospheric layers. It goes beyond the external structure of the planet. What if the real consequence began to act more intimately, more internally, on levels most people have never considered? With the protection of the heliosphere eliminated, high-energy cosmic radiation begins to reach Earth with full force. And in this new scenario, your body becomes part of the front line. These particles are not like those you find in medical tests or on electronic devices. They pass through living tissue, reaching deep layers of the organism and causing damage at the cellular level. The DNA structure, normally stable and well protected, begins to undergo random mutations. Affected cells no longer function properly. Some die, others reproduce in a disorderly way, starting processes that medicine recognizes as cancer. And it's not just genetic mutations. Cosmic radiation can alter brain synapses, cause neurological failures, and compromise communication between cells in the nervous system. Most alarming is the silent nature of this damage. You wouldn't hear any sound. I wouldn't see any light. Your body would not give immediate signals. The process would be internal, progressive, and invisible. Over time, the accumulation of cellular mutations and tissue destruction could trigger effects that no current technology could reverse. Prolonged exposure also affects the immune system, making the body vulnerable to infections and organic breakdowns. And the more time passes without this natural barrier, the greater the accumulation of internal radiation, as if the body was being reprogrammed without your consent. It is possible that in the early stages, the symptoms were so subtle that they would be mistaken for fatigue, common aches and pains, or memory lapses. But the real effects would be consolidating silently, altering the biology of the human body little by little, cell by cell. And this raises an inevitable question. How long could human life resist without realizing that it is being destroyed from within? The truth is, when it comes to the universe, we are surrounded by forces we barely understand. And in the midst of all this, hypotheses arise that defy all logic. Now it's up to you. What strange idea, unlikely theory, or mysterious hypothesis has crossed your mind about the universe? The one that seems too absurd to say, but that you can't ignore. Comment below. Who knows, maybe your theory will turn into a video on the channel. With Earth exposed to cosmic radiation and intensified solar winds, the effects are not limited to the human body. The technological infrastructure begins to feel immediate impacts. Satellites in orbit, responsible for communication, meteorology, navigation and Earth observation, are some of the first targets. The radiation affects sensitive circuits, which were not designed to operate outside the protection of the heliosphere. Systems crash, commands fail, transmissions are interrupted without explanation. The network that connects the planet begins to unravel, piece by piece. On the ground, the scenario also changes. Electrical transmission lines become vulnerable to electromagnetic surges. Overloaded by solar interference, they collapse. Entire regions face sudden blackouts. Plants try to compensate for imbalances, but instability spreads too quickly. Without power, hospital systems lose vital equipment. Emergency communications fail. Services that depend on real-time data, banking, transportation, security, become inoperable. It's not an ordinary blackout. It is the dismantling of the network that supports modern life. The absence of internet and GPS creates an information vacuum. The disoriented population loses access to reliable news, digital maps, social networks, and even the sense of time in many cases. Technological dependence, so integrated into everyday life, reveals itself as a hitherto invisible weakness. In a society where almost everything is digital, even the search for answers becomes a challenge. The question that begins to form is not just how to continue functioning, but how to continue to understand what is happening. And when information stops circulating, a new uncertainty arises. What else could be happening beyond the reach of our eyes and senses? The answer may lie in places that most people don't look at, but that would feel the effects even more directly. With the failure of satellite communication systems, aviation becomes one of the first areas to enter a critical state. Without functional GPS and real-time weather data, aerial navigation begins to operate in the dark. Commercial planes, which depend on precise coordinates to maintain routes, altitudes, and separation between aircraft, begin to operate with dangerous margins of error. A simple routine flight turns into a constant risk. Global airspace, previously coordinated by thousands of satellites, has become a chaotic and unpredictable environment. Control towers without access to reliable communications struggle to guide pilots in real time. Landings and takeoffs no longer follow normal protocols, increasing the chance of collisions and operational failures. Private, military, and commercial aviation are similarly impacted, and the reliability of global air transportation disappears in a matter of days. And it's not just about flights. The entire global logistics chain, which depends on planes to transport cargo, medicine, food, and essential inputs, collapses. The shelves are empty, deliveries stop, entire routes are cancelled. Without planes, the world slows down suddenly. This cascade effect directly affects the supply of cities, which are supported by an interdependent global system. When the airline network fails, it's not just transportation that disappears. It's the very idea of connectivity between countries, continents, and markets. The world shrinks, but not naturally. It fragments, and the longer the crisis progresses, the more difficult it becomes to regain control. And since you're here, still stuck on this line of thought, have you left a like? It's the type of gesture that helps this content reach more people who also want to understand what's beyond what the eyes can see. What if I told you that even in the face of all this collapse, there would still be something deeper, something that no one would see coming? A subtle change, but one that affects what is most intimate in our perception of reality. When everything around starts to fail without visible explanation, the first collapse happens not outside, but inside. The absence of clear signs, no explosions, no tremors, no identifiable physical event, turns the unknown into a breeding ground for fear. A world where structures gradually disappear while the surface appears intact generates confusion that the human mind is not prepared to process. The feeling of being exposed to something that has no smell, color, sound, or shape activates the most primitive fear that exists: the fear of the invisible. People would start to question whether the problem is real or just psychological. The doubt between what is physical and what is mental would begin to corrode collective sanity. Subtle signs, such as memory failures, lapses in attention, increasing irritability, would first be seen as tiredness or stress, until they become too common to ignore. Without clear answers, theories would emerge, some conspiracies, other religious, and still others are based on desperate attempts to find meaning where there is no longer any structure. Society, pressured by the lack of control and the failure of everyday logic, would begin to show symptoms of collective emotional collapse. Trust in institutions disappears, communication is fragmented, and psychological isolation takes the place of human connection. In an environment where everything seems stable on the outside, but internal signals multiply, a new type of terror emerges. One that doesn't come from what you see, but from what you feel without explanation. The most intriguing thing is that, in the midst of this psychological abyss, there are still records of human behavioral patterns in the face of extreme events. And within these patterns, there is a little explored detail, something that may reveal how the brain tries to protect itself, even when reality has already begun to unravel. The idea that the sun could stop rotating seems, at first glance, such an extreme scenario that it sounds impossible. But part of science is precisely this: investigating what still seems distant. Astronomers already monitor in real time subtle changes in solar behavior, from oscillations in rotation to unexpected fluctuations in particle emission and the pattern of solar storms. This data does not indicate an imminent catastrophe, but it serves as a reminder that the sun is more dynamic and more unpredictable than we often imagine. This is where speculation intersects with innovation. What if it were possible to develop technologies capable of artificially maintaining the sun's magnetic field, or to simulate its most critical effects, such as the heliosphere, from orbit-based defense networks? This idea is still in the field of theory, but it was in this same field that satellites, solar energy, and space telescopes were born. What today seems like fiction, tomorrow could become a strategic line of defense for life on Earth. Exploring this possibility requires a specific type of mindset, one that accepts the unknown not as something to fear, but as something to decipher. Because predicting a scenario like this doesn't mean giving in to fear. It means having the tools to act before it's too late. The universe operates on timescales that defy human perception, but with each scientific advance, this distance shortens. And do you think humanity is really ready to face a threat that doesn't scream, just whispers as it devours the world? Or are we still too blinded by routine to realize what may be slowly approaching the point where everything changes? This kind of theory doesn't come up every day. It's the type of content that makes you see the universe in a completely new way. Share with someone who is also fascinated by what is beyond our understanding, because there are people who need to see this now. The truth is that the universe is full of hidden gears, and one of them is the constant rotation of our sun. It's not the noise of the end that scares, it's the absence of signs. Because sometimes what it represents, the biggest threat, is precisely what goes unnoticed until it is too late. Being part of those who question this is already a choice. And here, each new hypothesis is more than a theory. It is an invitation to see beyond what has been taught. If you feel like these questions are yours too, sign up now and keep exploring the greatest mysteries of the cosmos with us. Each video takes you deeper, further, and there's so much more to come. And now that your mind is out of the orbit of the obvious, there's a next video waiting for you on your screen. It continues this line of thinking and can shake up everything you believe about reality. Click there and come with me, because the next question has already started to be asked.